Hello, my name is Gordon Zhang. I'm a scientist at WHOI Oceanographic Institution. And today I'm going to talk about the cross-shelf exchange induced by Gulf Stream warm core rings in the form of shelf water streamers at the Mid-Atlantic Bight shelf edge. So first, I would like to acknowledge my collaborators on this: Dennis McKillicuddy, Walker Smith, Heidi Sosik, and Rachel Stanley. So I'm talking about Mid-Atlantic Bight. And so here we have a rather wide continental shelf, and offshore of that, we have the slope sea and also the Atlantic Ocean, right? So the water on the continental shelf is dramatically different from the waters offshore. And in particular, in offshore, we have this Gulf Stream water coming from the southwest. It's very warm and very salty. And the Gulf Stream sometimes is very unstable and generate this large amplitude meanders. And sometimes the meanders can pinch off and form mesoscale eddies, so-called warm core rings. And the rings, they can migrate on their own, mostly towards southwest in this slope sea. And on the continental shelf, we have relatively cold and fresh water, mostly from the high latitude region, so mostly meltwater. And this shelf water is separated from the warm saline offshore waters by this so-called shelf break front. And the front is more or less aligned with the shelf break, or shelf edge. And because of this, the water on the shelf is dramatically different from the water offshore in physical, biological, and biogeochemical properties. And so, but this front, shelf break front, is not a rigid boundary. It's very leaky. It can be disturbed by a lot of processes. One of the processes is the Gulf Stream warm core rings, as I'm showing you here. When the ring, in this particular time in 2016, impinges onto the shelf break, it can sometimes push a substantial amount of rainwater directly onto the shelf. And so this is onshore intrusion of the rainwater represent a form of cross or shelf slope exchange. Because the rainwater is very warm, very salty, then much warmer and saltier than the shelf water, and also has dramatically different biogeochemical properties, as I'm showing on the right. The biological productivity in the surface rainwater is much lower. So this onshore intrusion is very important for the salt heat balance on the shelf and also biological productivity at the shelf edge. So this is onshore intrusion of the rainwater. At the same time, the rain can also entrain a substantial amount of shelf water directly into the slope sea in the form of streamers. So as I'm showing here, this is a black and white satellite SST image from 80s. So you can, the light color means higher sea surface temperature. This case, we have a warm core ring 79H impinging onto the shelf edge. To the east of the ring, we have this filament of dark, means cold shelf water being entrained directly into the slope sea. So that's the streamer we're talking about. Because the shelf water has dramatically different temperature than the slope or the rainwater or the Gulf Stream water. So this streamer can be clearly seen on the surface. And so a lot of people have studied the streamer using the satellite images since 70s or 80s. And more recently, people have looked into the formation of the dynamics of the streamer formation. So these are the surface view. And there are very few studies about the subsurface structure of the streamer because of lack of data. One exception is this paper by Joyce et al. In 1992. So they were out there in the slope sea measuring Gulf Stream warm core rings. And one of the rings they measured, 82B, formed a streamer to its east, as is shown here by the dark filament. And so they actually also measured the streamer along this white line. So they had a subsurface measurement of temperature, salinity, and other properties of the streamer. From that, they calculate the volume transport of the streamer is about 0.4 Sverdrup. And so on the left, I'm showing you the properties of the streamer. You can see a surface layer of cold and fresh water being transported offshore. And then from all this subsurface measurement, they can also calculate net heat, salt, suspended particulate matter, and oxygen fluxes in the streamer, right? So, but today I'm going to talk about another ring and associated streamer. And in particular, this ring 19C will coincide with a cruise we were on, the TN368. And it's part of the Sparroba project led by Dennis McKillicuddy. And Dennis has talked about this cruise at another talk in this session. And so let's first look at the surface pattern of the streamer. So here, the red line on the upper left panel, the red line is the mean trajectory of the Gulf Stream in February to August 2019. And the streamer 19C was formed in February at this location. After that, it migrated to the southwest along this blue trajectory. All right, so, and mostly along the, gliding along the shelf edge. And the rest of the panel showing the sea surface temperature pattern. So in February, you can see 19C was just formed and then migrate to the west, impinging onto the shelf edge. And then the lower panels showing snapshots of the ring at different times from March to August as the ring gliding along this shelf edge. So each panel corresponds to a dot on the upper left panel. And so you clearly see the ring pattern. And then to the east of the ring, you see this blue or green filament of shelf water. And that's a streamer. And this streamer persists over the entire time from March to August. And this streamer pattern can also be seen from the sea surface chlorophyll pattern images. So you see in February and March, you can see the ring 19C here, and then the rest are the snapshots of sea surface chlorophyll. And you clearly see within the center of the ring, the relative no concentration of chlorophyll, but then the streamer to the east has a relatively higher concentration of chlorophyll, and this pattern persisted over the entire time. So this means over this entire lifespan of the ring, from March to August, the ring generated persistent streamer transporting the shelf water into the slope sea. Right, so next I would like to show you some of the data from the cruise, but before that, let's look at zoom into the ring and streamer in July. So we have on the top, sea surface temperature on two different days, and the bottom, sea surface chlorophyll on 2 different days. And clearly see the ring and streamer pattern. And then we had transect, CTD transect during the cruise across the shelf break. So that mostly aligned with the streamer. We also had a transect across the streamer as shown by the triangles here. That's the cross the streamer. And we also had we towed a video plankton recorder, VPR, along this banded curve. So that's we called coat hanger transect. So along all these transects, we had a variety of measurements below the surface. So we know the subsurface structure of the streamer at those times. So here, for the sake of time, I'm showing you the cross streamer transect along these triangles. And we had temperature, salinity, density, oxygen, chlorophyll, sedum, velocities, and a number of other variables. For the sake of time, I'm not showing here. And so the black line represent 34.5 isohaline. So that outlines the shelf water in the streamer. So in this case, we have relatively cold and fresh water in the streamer. And the streamer is about 50 meters thick on the in the surface layer, and relative high chlorophyll, oxygen, and it has a subsurface chlorophyll maximum, but it's at a shallower depth than the chlorophyll maximum in the ring or slope water, and a high concentration of sedum. And then that's the subsurface information. So on the surface, from the coat hanger transect, we also measured oxygen argon concentration. From that, we can infer the net community production rate. So that's shown by this circles along the transect. Both the size and color indicate the NCP rate. So you see a strong correspondence between NCP rates and the streamer pattern. In particular, within the streamer, NCP is much higher than that in the surface rainwater or surface slope water. And then we can also look at phytoplankton biomass. So here I'm showing you the nanophytoplankton, which is between 2 to 20 microns, as the color of the circles indicate the biomass. So also see a strong correspondence within the streamer. there's more biomass than the neighboring surface rainwater or neighboring surface slope water. So this means that at least at this particular time, this streamer induced by rain 19C enhanced biological productivity, surface biological productivity in the slope C. All right, so from all the subsurface measurements, we can also estimate the transport of fluxes of different variables or different materials in the streamer. So that's the yellow line here. So that's showing, numbers are showing on the third column, in the third column. And then we would also like to know the net cross-shelf exchange associated with the streamer. For that, we will need to know how much offshore water is going onto the shelf to compensate for the streamer transport, but we don't know that. So here, so we provide two end members. The first end member EM1, assumes that all the streamer offshore transport is volumetrically balanced by the excessive inflow from the upstream shelf, right? So those basically means there is no net onshore transport from the offshore to the shelf, right? So this case, the offshore transport in the streamer itself actually represents the net cross-shelf exchange associated with the streamer. So that's the third column here. Then the other end member, we're assuming that the offshore transport in the streamer is volumetrically balanced by onshore intrusion of the rainwater. That's this red arrow here. So I have shown you that at times there are direct intrusion of the rainwater onto the shelf. However, at this particular time in July 2019, we did not observe direct intrusion of the rainwater, at least on the surface. But we provide this estimate here as a, for comparison. So with these two arrows here, we can calculate the net fluxes across the shelf edge. So those are numbers showing in the fourth column. And we can compare these numbers with estimate from other studies, either in the streamer, from the WHOI's paper, or other fluxes at the shelf break region. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to explain them one by one, but in general, this estimate showed that the streamer transport and its associated net cross-shelf exchange is significant. All right, to summarize, the ring 19C was formed in February 2019, and then migrate mostly along the shelf edge to the southwest. And in August, it reached almost Cape Hatteras and then got reabsorbed into the Gulf Stream. And warm core ring 19C over this period from March to August generate a persistent shelf water streamer transporting substantial shelf water into the slope C. Right, and during the cruise TN368, we sampled the streamer and provided a detailed view of the subsurface structure of the streamer. And we also sampled the surface water along and across streamer, showing that the surface productivity in the streamer is higher than the surface productivity in the neighboring rain or slope water, in the surface rain or slope water. And then we also calculate the fluxes in the streamer. And even though the streamer only lasted for 5 to 6 months, but it represents a major pathway of the shelf water being transported offshore into the slope C. All right, so that's all I have. Thanks for watching.